Thank you, Nina. You know, right now it's so important that we do maintain our sense of community. And so I'm so happy that you're continuing the Power Hour. I think that's a great way for women to connect and to talk about what they're experiencing right now. You know, we've all been through a roller coaster, and in the last few years, I personally lost some people who were very important in my life, and I started to think a little bit about how what we've been going through. You know, that you kind of, if you've lost someone and you read anything about grief, you learn that you kind of go through the 7 stages of grief is very common. And I actually think that to some degree, not to say that this is, you know, what we're experiencing right now is completely analogous to losing someone that we love, but there have been some phases, I think, for people as they've gone through this experience. You know, the shock and disbelief maybe that your business is closed, that your children's school has closed. That happened very quickly, and then, you know, you kind of go through different phases of that, and hopefully you come out on the on today. We're calling this. We're calling this pivot with tenacity, and so that's what I want to focus with. But I do want to thank you for everything that you do, and that the rest of your team at Women of Toledo do to help us maintain community. I have personally always held a firm belief that you should just do whatever Nina Corder asks you to do. Don't I say that, Nina? I always say, whatever Nina says I should do, I'm happy to do it. And I really value my own relationship with Women of Toledo. So I am in a new position. Some of you may have known me previously as a member of Toledo City Council, an amazing experience. I would still very much, anyone who's interested, any woman who's interested in running for office, I would so much like to be here to talk about my journey through, you know, running for office, serving. What an amazing experience. I often say women reinvent themselves many times within their lives, but I think maybe I shouldn't say reinvent, maybe I should say we build upon previous experiences. And so today, having been a woman who has started and owned several businesses in my life, served as an elected official, those things kind of come together for me now in this position that I'm in. And so it brings together all sorts of things that I'm interested in. I do help a lot of times small businesses navigate through city departments, building inspection, and you know, various zoning issues, licensing issues. And I really enjoy that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that as well if I hadn't had my own experience developing properties, my own experience as an elected official. So this position is, I would say it's my dream job, but I say that every time I take out a new venture. I say, this is it, this is my dream job. And entrepreneurial personality. So to speak about pivoting with tenacity, people often begin talking, doing a talk like this with definitions, but I think we decided on pivot with tenacity before I'd actually looked it up, and I found so much to think about when I did that, because any definition of pivoting always talks about some kind of, you know, a fixed point, and that it pivots around. So I think there's really something valuable there. We're being asked in every part of our life now to pivot, to make changes. And especially in our, if we own businesses or work within a business, we're seeing the need to pivot. This meeting is an example, right? We aren't together having lunch. We are together having lunch, but we're together in a different way. So this idea of pivoting from a central point, because I think what we need to remember is that we're not moving away from who we are at our core, from our basic skills, from our basic values. We're being asked to shift, but to maintain that balance on that center point. So I think that's really key. I think it is for me, thinking about the changes that we've had to make in our businesses, our family businesses, the changes in our work life at the City of Toledo. So that idea that you still maintain that center point, but you turn on it. But boy, tenacity. tenacity is what it takes. Any of the women who are with us today who have started a business know that it took creativity, it took strength, it took tenacity, it took the kind of persistence, determination that you really need to find that again. And I think we need to be there for each other in that way. I think we need, in some ways, to speak firmly and say, it's not going to be the way that it was. You're not going, you know, I talk to businesses all day long. Sometimes I have 20 conversations in a day. And I hear people saying, I just want it to be the way it was. And we know that for the foreseeable future, it's not going to be. And we also know that experiences like this change our culture and our society and our business world. So you do have to reach back, remember those times when you had to be so strong, you had to push forward so hard. We need to do that now. So we need to pivot with tenacity. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about just some of the practical steps that a business can take right now. And I'm just going to offer some access to some resources because I think that it's really hard right now. There is so much noise out there. There's so much, everybody's got their business resources page, and you can become completely overwhelmed. And I will say for sure, you can find a webinar that contradicts another webinar. And you begin to feel like, well, where's the truth? What can I really count on? What can I really do? And so you do need to find those reliable resources, especially if your business is having to create new standards of operation. You need to know what's being required from you from the federal, the state, and the local level. Once you know that, that's where the creativity begins. And I have seen amazing creativity among businesses. They say, okay, these are the guidelines. These are the borders I have to work within. How can I become creative within those borders? There is, to some degree, a need right now to strip your business down to its core. Let's go back to that idea of that central point of pivoting. And that core is you. And it's your strengths. And then you have to say, how do I build that business back out again in a way that's going to be relevant to people today, that's going to provide what they need today, that's going to make them feel safe and comfortable interacting with my business. So I think we do that, and we need to do that. We need to strip it down. There are some models that are not going to work right now. They're not going to work financially. You're not going to be able to, maybe with a very reduced customer base now, perhaps, how are you going to be able to survive? And try, offering something that you've not offered before. You have to have the honesty to really peel that back. And you may find that you need an outside view of that. And that's why I want to recommend our community is rich with resources for free and confidential entrepreneurial advice. And you mentioned Jumpstart earlier, Nina. Minority Business Assistance Center, the Small Business Development Center. They are all resources where you can talk to someone about what's happening within your business and how you can pivot for the future. So maybe people have felt, as entrepreneurs, we tend to be very do-it-yourself, and we tend to think, I've got this, I know what to do. If there has ever been a time where you really need to sound things off of someone else, someone that's really experienced in talking to businesses, this is the moment. You can do Service Corps Retired Executives, SCORE. So many of these organizations, it would be better if maybe some of these phone numbers, maybe you could give them out as a follow-up email or something. But to go back to this issue of where can you get good, reliable information? In our community, everybody I just mentioned and lots of other organizations are partnering together on something called Toledo Reboot, where we're trying to have a single source for information. And that includes Lucas County, it includes the city of Toledo, and it includes those organizations that I mentioned just previously. And so if you go to the Toledo Regional Chamber of Commerce website, you can find it at toledochamber.com. You're going to find that all these partners have put information there in one place. It's constantly being updated and it's reliable. And it will have local, state, federal requirements. It will have specific sector information for the kind of business. Do you own a salon, food service, daycare? So this is a place that we as a community have decided we're going to put information. And every time that I get something new in, I send it over to the chamber to put on that Toledo Reboot site. Many of you know that the chamber houses the Small Business Development Center, and some of you have maybe worked with them to build your business. The Small Business Development Center is within the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber membership is not necessary to use their services, but they are funded by the Small Business Administration, and they have received some additional funding to make this Toledo Reboot program happen. And so you can call the Small Business Development Center. That is one number I'm going to give. That's 419-243-8191. 243-8191, because they are a great resource for understanding the small business administration programs that are out there, because they are directly connected to the SBA. So I do want to mention that. But if you're needing to see the local health department's information on your sector of business, that's all there on that site. So I really want to recommend that you go there. You can sign up for a daily newsletter, or not daily, rather. It's as new information comes in, but you will get emails from them. I think that's a great resource. Some of you, your particular industry may also have an association, a state or national association. I would recommend that that be your second resource. You've got to limit it. You could spend all day. I think early on we were all on a lot of webinars and a lot of things that trying to get information. And I think now we're moving into the action period. Things are reopening, and we need to move into action. We don't have the time for all of that information. So I think the secondary place you need to look is within your own sector of business. And if it's a food service business, the Ohio Restaurant Association has an amazing website. Again, not requiring membership. And there is a daily newsletter that comes out from them that is absolutely fantastic. The Ohio Restaurant Association has done so much advocacy at the state level, and then the National Restaurant Association at the national level. Do you know that when the governor was, and this is from the governor himself, he told this story to the mayor, that he was going to just close restaurants. And it was, you can safely leave restaurants open for carryout. And you know how important that's been to so many restaurants. Did you know, the other thing is that the Ohio Restaurant Association shares this data point, which is that 51% of food dollars are now spent in restaurants. More than half of food dollars are spent in restaurants rather than in grocery stores. So important. 1 in 10 jobs in our state is related to food service. So they have been great. So if you are involved in a business where there is some sort of state or national organization that can give you good information, I would highly recommend that. I want to just very briefly, before we kind of open up for questions, I want to talk about what kind of relief is out there. What can you realistically expect? Early on, some of you may have applied for the economic injury disaster loan. That's something that's been around with the SBA for a long time. That's what they use for crop failures, for hurricanes. And initially, it was announced that that was a 3 3/4% loan, amortized up to 30 years, so low interest, patient money, but it was to be a loan. And some of you may have applied at that stage, and it was a pretty heavy-duty application. You had to have profit and loss statements, and you had to upload your tax returns. And then the CARES Act, the first iteration of the CARES Act, kind of changed that. because they put in this ability to get up to $10,000 as a loan advance. And that was a really short and easy application. And so many of you may have received money from that program. You may have received that loan advance. They did make the change to that, that it was $1,000 per employee, which really hurt some of our smallest businesses because they don't have a lot of employees, but maybe their rent's expensive. And so I was disappointed when that happened, but most people have received that relief. I think if you have not yet received it, but you applied and you got a number, I think you can expect to get something from that program. People are asking me though, what about the part 2 of that? What about the loan part? Because they would like to have that. Maybe they can replace more expensive debt with that. Maybe it will allow them for some of this pivoting that needs to take place. Within the next 2 weeks, you should be getting some kind of email from the SBA, either declining a loan to you or offering you a loan. And there'll be a range of that you can borrow from this much to this much. The SBA told me it's going to be a little sliding scale that you can do, and then you will proceed to loan documents and so forth. So I do want you to know that some of those emails are ending up in spam, in junk, in promotional. If you are interested in getting one of those loans, you really need to look very carefully for that email and respond to it. There's nothing forgivable about the EIDL loan. That loan advance is forgivable, and it can be used as working capital, which is a broad range of things. The other program that many people took advantage of was the Paycheck Protection Program. And the first wave of that, $380 billion, and Zoom, it went out really fast because a lot of really big companies got really big amounts. And the idea with that was, it is not like the EIDL where you apply through this SBA. This, you had to go to the bank where you had your business account. Well, there were some problems with that. If your bank was a traditional SBA lender, they were ready to move right into that. If they weren't, they were deputized to offer an SBA loan, but some of them weren't very familiar with it. They weren't real comfortable with it. They started putting their own extra requirements on it. And a lot of people did not get in that first wave. Then Congress put another $310 billion in it. Isn't it amazing? We talk about these massive numbers. Another $310 billion into that. And they put some safeguards in so that small businesses would get a shot at it. And so I want everyone here to know, if you did not apply for the PPP and you are interested, there is still money in that program. It is moving out very slowly. And if your lender has told you no in the past, you should call them back and you should ask your bank if they will do it now. And if you absolutely hit a wall, LISC, Local Initiative Service Corporation, an important partner in our community, is offering the PPP to woman-owned, minority-owned, and veteran-owned businesses. And so just briefly on how the PPP works and a few words of advice on that, yes, it can all be forgiven. You take a look back at the year before the COVID emergency, your average payroll. Let's say it's only you though, and you're like, I don't pay myself with a W-2. You can even use the draws that you took, that Schedule C profit that you had. That's what you paid yourself in your business. You can apply for the PPP if you had, for yourself and for your employees' payroll. You can borrow, or you can receive 2.5 times that monthly amount. At the moment, 75% of that has to be used for payroll within an 8-week period after you get it, and 25% can be used for rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. Now, why did I say at the moment? Because there is a huge push to change this program. If you own a salon or a restaurant and you got your PPP a month ago, you couldn't even be open, and yet the meter was running on your money. I do know that there is a lot of expectation that there will be some changes in this, that they might move the goalposts on it, that your 8 weeks might start when you actually could reopen your business. I also think that I know that there's some conversation around maybe allowing more than 25% of it to be used for things like rent. You can't count on those things right now. The SBA has not given that guidance out, but that's why you need to be signed up, for example, on the Toledo Reboot site, so you can get that information. What happens if it doesn't get forgiven? You can give it back. You can pay that part back. Say, I don't want a loan. The part that didn't get forgiven, I don't want a loan. If you keep it as a loan, it's 1% loan, has to be paid in 2 years, but the payments don't start for 6 months. It might work for your business, but remember, it's not one size fits all. You have to decide, does this work for me? Some people fell through the cracks on both of those programs. They didn't fit them, they didn't work for them. I have some alternatives. In the past, a sole proprietor or a 1099 employee could never get unemployment, right? You can now. And the unemployment can go back to the day that you had to close your business or that your business ended, dropped off. You can apply for unemployment. Even if you had employees that only worked 10 hours a week and they didn't make enough money to actually get state unemployment, all three of those categories, sole proprietor, 1099, and that low hour employee can all apply for unemployment and receive that $600 extra stipend from the federal government. And that is retroactive. So I actually know there are small businesses where they were not able to get the paycheck protection, and some of the owners just received like $5,000 in back unemployment. You go to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services site and you can apply right on there. But again, tenacity. Yes, people get denied all the time because they're overwhelmed. And just because you got denied, you can appeal, you can give them more information. You have to get that little number, that login number from them, and you got to watch that website and you need to put your number in. You need tenacity. I've talked to so many people, oh, I was denied. Yes, like you and half the world. It's not an efficient system right now because it's so overwhelmed. You fight for that. If you're qualified for that unemployment, fight for that because that's the money you're going to need to restart and pivot and move on with your business. So unemployment is another option. And the other option is that we as a city, now this is only for our City of Toledo, Women of Toledo, if you own a business, a micro enterprise, 5 or less employees, including the owner, we have committed $1 million of community development block grant money we got as part of the CARES Act to respond to the COVID-19 emergency for micro enterprise relief. And you can apply at the City of Toledo website, just Google in City of Toledo, or if you want to put toledo.oh.gov. And it's the EMRG grant, Emergency Microenterprise Recovery Grant, because we want to help these very small businesses that make an outsized impact on their communities emerge and come forward out of the COVID emergency. And we are allowing expenses that a lot of other programs don't. For example, if you had a food service business, you might have lost a lot of product. It's expired, it went bad when you were suddenly forced to close. So product to restock your shelves, that is one of the things that you can go for your employees. And plexiglass shields, those sorts of things, you can apply for that. Professional cleaning, if you own a fitness center, you may need to have it professionally cleaned to make your customers feel comfortable. So some things that are not typical. And the grant is up to $5,000. Not everyone is asking for $5,000, and that warms my heart. We've got a lot of people who are asking for exactly what they need. And so it is for expenses that you've either paid back to March 1st or invoices for things that are due up till January or June 30th. And so you have to be, because this is money from HUD, this is block grant dollars, either your business has to be in a low to moderate income census tract, and we have a nice interactive map that you can look at, or your household has to fall within the 80% of the HUD median area income, and so be considered low to moderate income. And so I would encourage any of the small businesses that are represented on this call to take a look at that. Here's the key. People ask me all the time, can I apply for more than one program? They get nervous when they're applying for too many things. And I said, of course you can. You can apply for all the programs that your business is eligible for. Just remember, no double dipping. If you use a receipt for this program, you can't use a receipt for that program. You can't ask for rent from one program and ask for it from the other. Make sure that you are keeping great bookkeeping, you're keeping your receipts, and you know which of the programs that you are using those expenses for. Otherwise, you can absolutely apply for those things. The final thing I'd like to say before we open up for questions is, don't let these programs, what did they say, be the tail that wags the dog. Do not do things because you're obsessed with getting your PPP forgiven, or you just, the important thing is that you make smart decisions right now, that you pivot with tenacity, and that you pivot with wisdom and knowing who you are and what you have to offer the community and what you think that the community needs. And so make sure that the choices you're making are good business decisions, and then use these programs as tools to make that happen. But if it's going to be sustainable, if the way that you're trying to rethink your business is going to be sustainable, it's going to be because you're making the right decisions, not because you're trying to meet what some program is going to give you. So, thinking in terms of the future, what are the needs of people? How could you think of your customer base and serve them now? That's what's really important. Keeping that center core that you pivot on, that's about your skills and what you bring to the marketplace. So, Nina, I'm open for questions.